Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Self-Improvement for Women. My name is Hope. I am your host, and I have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Caroline Wong, and she is an expert of all things hypnotherapy, breath work. I just did an amazing session with her, so I'm like elated right now, and I'm so relaxed. But she is, and she's just amazing. So Caroline, without further ado, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself here a little bit, because I'm in my zone right now.
I'm so glad to hear that. So I'm Caroline. I have a hypnotherapy practice business. I also am a course creator. I have a podcast and I do lots of things. I find myself to be like a creative, multifaceted creative entrepreneur. I'm not just a one kind of trick pony. I feel like all of the things that I do offer and do really blend nicely with the entire picture. As much as I think people like to say, well, what's your niche? Like, what do you just have to do one thing. Yes, I agree with that. But I also believe that when you look at the entire picture of something, which is what I feel like my business and what I do, it just makes me see the specifics of what will help the client get from point A to point B the fastest. The fastest, let me rephrase that, not just fast, but I want them to go fast, the quickest way there, but the most efficient in what they are learning and how much they are going to retain. Right? It's like when people lose weight and they just quit eating for like 30 days or whatever it is that they do, some of these crazy things, like they drink water for a week. I just heard of somebody doing that. Like they called the water fast. This girl had just drank water for a week, no food, just drinking water. I'm like, that's so not good for your body.
No.
But you're going to lose weight, right? Obviously. But then what happens when you start eating again? This is what I mean. It's like, I want to give people tools and teach them things about themselves, because the goal is not to rely on me forever.
Right.
I want to teach you things so that you are not coming to me for the next 3 years of your life. I want you to be your own healer or your own, whatever you want to call yourself. I don't want to, guru is not the word, but I want people to realize their innate power within themselves. They need to empower themselves. I can give you tips and tricks and tools and things, like I just taught you how to do the self-hypnosis thing. But the goal is to teach people to find the wisdom within themselves, because no one is going to know you better than you. And I just help you uncover that. That's simply what I do.
That's so awesome. And you are very good at it. You are very good at it. So if we could, let's dive into a little bit about how you got started on this journey of helping other people, and what kind of led you into this. I know it also started with yoga a little bit here. So what kind of led you to all of this?
So I started my yoga practice probably 10, 11 years ago. I just went to my hairdresser at the time and I said, you know what? I want to be a yoga teacher. And he's like, Caroline, you don't even meditate. Like, how are you going to teach yoga if you don't even meditate? A, you don't own a yoga mat. B, I can't get you to meditate to like save your life. And C, like, where did you even come up with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I just literally want to be a yoga teacher. And he's like, okay. So I look into it. I find a yoga certification. I start going to yoga. That would have been the first thing, right? I start going to yoga, absolutely fall in love with it. Love it, love it, love it. And I don't do like regular yoga. Like you would think I would go to like a regular, like just class. I pick hot yoga. Ooh. Right? And of course, this lady is doing her yoga business. Her name was Felice. That was my first yoga teacher ever. she's in this, she rents out the front part of a hair salon, and it's this small room, and there's 4 heat lamps in each corner, one in each corner. And when I tell you hot, like it was hot. I survived though. And I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And I loved it and I loved it. And I felt like just layers of just yuck coming off of me from all this time. And so then I thought, you know what? I'm going to teach yoga. So she tells me about this program, this YTT that I start, which ends up being a little bit of a drama, but that's a whole nother episode. But anyway, I finished my YTT, and in the process of doing all of this work, my dad is diagnosed with cancer, and I start being able to use these tools, of which I didn't realize would be very beneficial to me as I'm going through this process. And then, that kind of takes precedence, that, going through the illness with my dad. And then around that same time, my daughter is now going through an eating disorder, or she's losing weight, and then it morphs itself into an eating disorder. So I'm really in the thick of it at this point. And an eating disorder is very hard. Like, I felt in the family, I felt like as the mom, it was a lot of me taking the brunt of everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. And it was very isolating. It was very difficult. And the yoga, again, is something that I use as a tool to being able to just move my body, help my daughter a little bit. But then it kind of got to the point where it wasn't working. And, I think that that's a natural thing. Like, in a lot of things that we do, that we find so much faith and empowerment in, like when people are on a weight loss path and they hit that plateau where there's no growth, there's no movement, I'm stuck. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that's what I reached at my yoga space, where it wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't helping me move through the things that I needed to move through. So then my dad passes away, and that just like completely rocks my world. And I start, through the yoga, I'm doing meditations, but meditations like very simple, not anything too in depth, not any yoga nidra, not any of that. And I start to look at more meditations, and I find hypnotherapy, and I'm like, But of course, I, in my brain, had always associated hypnotherapy with like swinging clocks, and people clucking like chickens on a stage, and people taking their clothes off because the guy says, take your shirt off on the stage, and all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, what is this hypnotherapy thing? And is it real? And so I listened to a pre-recorded hypnotherapy session, and I was like, wow, I feel really good. Like, this is really weird, but I feel really good. And so I keep doing it, and I keep doing it, and I keep doing it. And I tell I have my daughter listen to it, and she kind of like, she was like, yeah, but no, I don't really like it. And I realized, okay, well then this is not for her. Like, this is, at this point, this is what's helping save me, because if we don't save me, she's not going to be, there's nobody in the boat like rowing for her, Right. So I think I do it like by myself for like 3 or 4 months, and I'm like hooked. I'm like, this is really, really helping me. I'm like, what if I do like this plus yoga? Maybe that will work. And so that's where I said, well, you know what? And you can't just, I don't feel like I'm not one to just like go and do things without having like a very robust scientific, like very, like, I have to have my stuff in order to be able to feel like I can work with people and really like do and teach them things, and really, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to feel like I got my the certification out of like the Cracker Jack box. So I did my certification for hypnotherapy, and because I felt like, I can help so many people not just needlessly suffer. Like there's so much suffering on this planet. And no, I can't help all 8 billion people, but I can help one person at a time. And the main goal was teaching me to be able to help my daughter. That was the goal. And it worked. And so that's what motivated me the most in that journey, was to be able to help my daughter, and in turn help myself, because I had reached a point of just like nothing was working.
Yeah.
Zero was working.
So often I think when we go through things like loss or like addiction or anything like that, eating disorders, even if we're not the person that it's directly affected, we're the person rowing the boat for the other person, right? Like you said. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It's like putting like the plane's going down and you need to give yourself the oxygen first so that you can help the next person. Like it's very much that aspect. And I think it's fascinating that when things start going haywire and we start searching for answers and we start searching for that relief, we find things that help us that we can turn around and use for other people as well, or help other people with.
Right.
It's the same concept with my recovery. Like I was like, I was a shit show, I couldn't help anybody, couldn't help myself. And then when I did start helping myself, that was the door that was opening, right? That was the door. It's like, oh, okay, well, here's 60 other women that need your help. And then you're like, oh, well, I have the tools, I can help them. So when you were going through this loss and with your daughter and everything, what are some of your key takeaways? Like what were you gaining from the hot yoga, from the hypnotherapy, that like was it peace of mind? Was it confidence that things were going to work out? Things like that.
I think what it was that my teacher would always tell us, at the very beginning when you're starting a yoga practice, meaning not yoga practices in like a brick and mortar, but your own yoga practice as you're starting yourself, beginner, whatever, never been on a yoga mat. There's a lot of inner confidence. People see people in yoga poses and they look like pretzels, or they're standing on their head, or they're doing a one-hand handstand with like on a rock in the middle of the canyon. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like you see these poses and people are like, shit, how do these people do this kind of stuff? Like this is yoga, but it's really not. Like it's a pose. That's a pose. Okay. The practice of yoga is learning to move through a series of poses or movements, learn how to breathe through those poses, and learn how to be present with yourself on the mat, on your little rectangle of the planet that you are there in class, or whatever you're standing on, grass, wood, I don't care, whatever you're standing on. It's your moment to connect back to you. That's really what it is. And if you sit there in child's pose the entire time, then so be it. But it was my teacher telling me things of, tapas, which is when we burn off things, like when we're in a pose, and that pose, and we're getting a little bit shaky and it burns and we're just like, oh my gosh, I can't stand here in this pose anymore. The teacher's like, breathe through that and let it go, because it's something in the body energetically that wants to be released. And that's what I learned. The more I would go to yoga, I would have some days I would be in Shavasana, which is the end of pose where we're laying in corpse on the mat and we're done with our class. And I would just cry. And I'm like, this is great. Like people think, oh my God, you're crying. No, it's your body releasing what it needs to release. And so we never know when it's going to come out, but that's the beauty of it. And one other thing that I didn't mention, it has nothing to do with yoga and hypnotherapy, but in this time of back in the same frame of time, I had started marathon running. And again, I don't go for, I'm going to go run the 3 mile or the 5 mile. I tell my husband, I'm running a marathon. And again, he says, Caroline, you've never run any more than 3 miles. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's 26.2 miles. Why are you going to do this? I'm like, but I'm going to do it. And I picked the Disney Marathon. So he's like, Caroline, oh my God, what's wrong with you? So I spend 10 years. Right now I'm on going into marathon 17. I've done, I don't know, 12 half marathons on top of that. And I realized something in my 11th year of being a runner. All those years, I really feel like I was trying to run from myself.
Mm-hmm.
Had nothing to do with really running in general. But I think subconsciously, now that I know all that I know about the subconscious and in my hypnotherapy practice and in all of my years of yoga, I really feel like I spent those years thinking that I could run from myself.
Yeah.
And I never did. I ran like Forrest Gump, and I kept running and I kept running. And I would finish one marathon and I'd sign myself up for the next one. And I finished I overtrained for my first marathon, right? Ended up having knee surgery 4 months later after I finished marathon number 1. And the doctor told me, he's like, I don't know, you may not run again the way that you think you're going to run. He's like, because you did some damage to your knee and I don't think that it's going to work. And I was like, okay, I got to do it because I got to fix it because I can't even walk. So, and I kept running. I healed it and did my therapy and I kept running. And I will tell you that you can't run. You can run, don't get me wrong. And it feels good to run. There's something about running that I cannot, running is its own animal. There's things that you feel when you run that you just can't mimic in any other sport. The same with yoga. There's feelings in yoga that you are just not going to get unless you get on the mat and do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main thing is that you can't run from anything. And the reason being is because until you work it out in the subconscious, which is what I learn in hypnotherapy, because it's there, it's stored, it's in the body and in the fascia, in the tissue of our entire being. That's where the yoga releases your energetic and your things that you've had just stuck. Mm-hmm. That's why when we stretch and we loosen the body and we move the body, people they start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, because you're shifting and you're moving that stuck energy that's been there for so long. And it's a miracle. Like that, the transition that I've gone through from, the first race I ever ran to picking up yoga at that same time and moving through that, and then that moving me into hypnotherapy, which then opens up all these other, doors and avenues that I never saw coming. And I think that's just the beauty of the work. It's the beauty of uncovering you. Like we talked about in your podcast with me about the layers coming off and opening up. Yeah. This is what happens when your body begins to heal. Pieces of you that you didn't know existed begin to surface because they've been shut down for so long and covered up for so long.
So, yeah. And so when you really started diving in, did you have hypnotherapy? Like, did you go to somebody and do the hypnotherapy too, like on yourself or sorry, on yourself or with another person, a hypnotherapist?
So in the very beginning, I was just listening to recording.
Yeah.
Correct. Then when I did my certification, we had to do in-person certification.
Right.
And they were 3 weekends worth of nonstop, like from Friday to Sunday night at like 9 o'clock, nonstop of work, which was very hard. Like, I never anticipated it being that intensive, but it was not easy. And when your brain is in, even just from a physical aspect, like the energetic transfer of energy in those moments when you're working with other people and you're hypnotizing other people and then people are working on you. I mean, you're going through such a roller coaster of emotions because with every session that you do, you're digging a little bit deeper and your body is freeing up. It's not so tense anymore. And it's starting to realize that what you're doing for it is actually amazing and it wants more. And it's willing to uncover more to you. It's willing to heal more because it knows the benefit of the last healing session that it just went through. And it remembers that. It creates like an imprint. And so the more you do, the better you get at uncovering yourself.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
amazing. And so, and then you transitioned into like breath work. And
And then-
we talked really briefly, we were chatting previously, we talked really briefly about it. But there's a couple different exercises that we talked about. So for people that are watching, like what is breath work and what are the benefits of breath work?
Okay. So I wrote down, because breath work is very hard to, I wrote down my scientific version of what breath work, what happens during breath work. Because if I just show you, which I can show you now, the 3-part breath work that I do, it's not gonna, you'd have to experience it to do it, right? Me telling you how to do it is not really gotta move through it, but this is what happens, okay? So you have your parasympathetic nervous system, right? And then you have the autonomic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is something that when we start to, like when you were going through your hypnotic self-hypnosis, you were engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. You were calming your nervous system down, right? Okay. So when you are doing the breath work, you are enlivening the oxygen in the body. Okay. So you're bringing more oxygen and blood flow to the body. Okay. And the ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide starts to stimulate the vagus nerve. So you are going to feel like, some people feel like, oh, well, I'm hyperventilating. You're not really hyperventilating. You're just not used to breathing that way. It's not really a hyperventilation. You are able to breathe, right? Somebody who is in a total hyperventilation panic attack breathes into a bag, right? Because they need to bring more of their, they need more oxygen at this point, right? They flooded their body with so much carbon dioxide that they're like freaking out, right? So when we bring more of the carbon dioxide, then we are stimulating the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve instructs the body and the brain to relax. The heart rate begins to slow. So the first couple of minutes, like the first 2 to 3 songs of a breath work session, right, are probably going to be your most challenging. People who do this for the first or second time, I always say to them, okay, breathe. We're going to take this a little slow. We're not going to do the 3-part breath fast, because the faster you go, the more blood flow and oxygen you're pushing into the system, right?
Right.
You're breathing faster, okay? But what happens is as the more you go into that, the reverse effect begins to happen. And you stimulate the vagus nerve. And once you start to stimulate the vagus nerve, you really go into this like euphoric place. Now, I've never done any hard drugs in my life, but people that have done hard drugs compare it to a very euphoric, sometimes hallucinogenic experience, because you are engaging the body and the brain to a point where it's much more elevated than you just sitting and breathing through a meditation class. It's very different. Okay. So your heart rate begins to slow, becomes your blood pressure regulates, and then it begins to decrease. And then you are really starting to change the neurobiological makeup and chemicals within the body. And that reptilian part of the brain where it wants to just come in and like save you, right? It calms itself. And you're able to reach that just, I don't know, like it's just like sometimes you're in a different place. And it is wild. It really is wild. And you wake up and you're like, you're energized. You feel like, the elephant that might have been sitting on your chest is gone. Mm-hmm. You might have cried. You might have laughed. You might have just been somebody from, that had passed over. Like a lot of times I'll see my dad. My dad will make his appearance and he'll talk to me, or I never know what to expect in a breathwork class. So it's being able to tap into those places where you're never going to get if you don't go deep. It's always about the work, always. And I know you can sympathize with this, because I can tell you all day long that breathwork is amazing, and that hypnotherapy is amazing, and that yoga is amazing, and that those three things will change your life forever and ever and ever, over and over and over and over again. But unless you do it, it means nothing. And that's the hardest part. Doing it and doing the work is the hardest part. And people don't want to do the work. They fear the work. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck. It's going to be like, I'm dredging up my past, and I don't want to lay there and breathe. What's wrong? Like, why would I just lay there and breathe? I just breathe every day. No, you don't. You really don't breathe. You think you breathe, but you're not breathing.
I think a lot of times too, when people get a little bit this standoffish toward the hypnotherapy, toward the breath work, toward serious meditation, they get a little bit enclosed because they have a fear of uncovering things that they have put inside, that what they want to stay there, right? Like, I know for me, when I first started doing meditation, I stopped doing it because my brain, I felt like I had no control over my brain. And I was nervous, and I was afraid that I was going to come out, like the real Hope was going to come out, and she was not somebody I liked, right, at that time. And so I was really nervous about that. And so I put it off for a while. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, but if I bring this out, if I get it to the surface, I can make it go away. But I can't make it go away if it's stuck. And so I was like, okay. And so I tried it again. And this time I had a little bit more of an open mind. But my first experience with it was, I was scared, and it scared me. But it's doing things that scare you that will progress you the most, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that having an open mind is a very big part of this as well. Like, I know my parents are in their late 70s, and they, have worked hard their whole lives. They're very, strict by the book, kind of Christian folk. And when I told them, oh, I'm meditating, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing these things, they were like, okay, and it was that, huh?
It's like a cult thing.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah. I think it made them a little bit nervous. But I know that yoga, my mom now will turn on yoga on the TV and just listen to it because it relaxes her. And so she's getting a little bit more open-minded with it. But I definitely think, if you're open to trying new things, definitely try the hypnotherapy, definitely try the breath work, definitely try meditation, yoga, those things, because you don't know where it's going to take you. And you could have an epiphany that could change your life, right? Just your thought process could change.
Yep. That's what happens, by the way. That's when you get those drop-ins of your next brilliant idea, is when you are able to calm the brain enough to where your subconscious and your higher self, like the higher version of you, that you probably aren't aware of that exists is able to send you downloads from God, source, whatever you subscribe to, of what your next move should be.
Mhm.
That's where it happens, because it's not going to happen when you're in like this total like frantic panic of, oh shit, what do I do? You know, you have to be able to drop into that space of where your higher self actually knows that you're going to listen.
Mhm.
That's not going to be when you're screaming at whomever or you're having a moment. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep. You
then
have
you're
to
not
be
going to
able
believe
to,
it.
yeah, like tune in. You need to tune in. And I think it's funny to like people that pray, like they're praying to God or they're praying, it doesn't matter, Allah, whatever it is. But prayer is a form of meditation. Some people don't like to accept that, but and then they'll just call it prayer. But what it is you are connecting to something that is greater than you, that will fill you spiritually with information that you may need. When we pray for, oh, I hope my interview goes well, or oh, I hope my doctor's appointment goes well, you are tuning in to something bigger than you that can give you some clarity and give you some peace, right? And it's the same thing with meditation, yoga, breath work, those things. You're doing the things to allow yourself to receive the information or to receive the confirmation or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
um so as we're getting toward the end here, I know um typically you do mini hypnosis stuff, but you have a disclaimer where you can't like drive or do anything like that while you're listening. um but if you could just kind of, like you did with me, just like walk through what those steps look like for people that may want to just give it a try on their own. Like if you guys have 5 to 10 minutes, just alone time, just you, this is worth a shot. We did it right before we recorded this, and I feel amazing. Like I went from a level, what did I say, 7 of stress,
Yeah.
and I immediately down to like a 2 or a 3,
Mm-hmm.
because all those things, it was funny because after I got done, I thought about it and I was like, all those things in between level 6 and 2 and 3, those are like didn't even matter. Like they don't matter. I don't know why I was stressing out about it, because it's not something that's gonna like be in my face right now today. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you guys have like 5-10 minutes, I highly suggest you just try it. Just give it a shot. If anything, you'll just come out of it relaxed. What's the best that could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to give us kind of a breakdown of what that looks like.
Okay. So basically, what you would do is you would come up with some kind of mantra or affirmation. And if you want to, we can share the one that we used for you for
Yeah.
abundance, if people are looking for abundance. So let me see. We said that money is abundant and comes from the universe and flows freely towards me. Okay, so that would be your mantra that you would use. And then you're going to start off by thinking of a color that you like. You're going to take that color and you're going to run it through the body, almost like it's water falling itself over you. But instead of it just washing over you, you want it to like really like internally take anything that no longer serves you through the body, out the bottoms of the feet, continually do that for a couple of times. Then you're going to check your eyelids, go back, start to relax parts of the body, your face, your jaw, your shoulders, anywhere where you feel like you're just very, very tense. You want to like loosen those parts and then go back to the eyelids. Once you go back to the eyelids, I want you to try to open them. And you'll see that as your body has started to relax itself, it doesn't want to open the eyelids. Okay. And I find that's the part where people are so like, oh my gosh, my eyelids don't want to open right now. And I'm like, I know, because your body wants to relax. That's why they don't want to open, because you've relaxed yourself and it's enjoying it. So it's telling you, don't open your eyes, because all the magic is going to take place with your eyes shut. Okay. Then I go through like taking you through like, on from 10 to 1, that your body is going deeper and deeper into this relaxation state. So 10, I'm going deeper and deeper. 9, I'm going deeper and deeper, all the way to 1. We run the color back through the body again. Then you're going to say your, I am safe, I am calm, I choose to be here. If you don't like those 3 things, then you can come up with 3 new ones. Okay. Whatever you want to say in that, I am strong, I am powerful, I am loved, whatever you want to say. And then we get into the meat of the hypnosis where you say your mantra. When I was doing this with you, we only did it 5 times. Okay. So when you're doing it by yourself, you'll want to do it at least 21 times, reciting it in your head. And then after that's over, then you really, once you've done that for the 21 times, then I want you to just sit and I want you to kind of like create a movie screen behind the eyes. And I want you to look at the things that you are aspiring to, not to, and I guess I should have said this to you earlier, that movie screen is not like to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so far away from where I am. Okay. I want you to see the potential in yourself. I want you to really believe that that is you. Because when you see it and you embody it and you feel it and you really embody that whole like energetic component of yourself, it's like you're already there and you're just going through the motions. And after you do that, then you seal it all in with that color. Instead of letting that color go, you're going to bring that color back. And then instead of just letting it all seep out, we want to seal it in. We want to protect that feeling. And that's it. Yeah. And you're done. And you do that for, I would recommend for 30 days. If you can do it 2 or 3 times a day, beautiful. And keep your same mantra for that 30 days. Yeah. And see how you've done.
And I will say, like, on the visualization part, so sometimes people find it really hard to visualize like where they want to be, or like legitimately see themselves sitting in the Ferrari, or sitting on that beach or whatever. Right. But when I will tell you, like, I do this occasionally, and I did find it a little bit difficult in the beginning of when we were starting the session to start visualizing. And so at first I started with me and I pictured myself smiling. And then I started to put the people around me that I would want to be around. And then I started like thinking like, well, how would I like to actually feel? And I felt a breeze. And I was like, oh, so I'm on vacation. Like, I'm on vacation and I am with my family and we're having a great time. Because that to me is abundance, right? Traveling with family, and I'm loved, I'm safe, I'm happy, I'm exploring the world with my people, right? Right. But it's taking those little tiny parts and then just kind of putting them together, and you're like, oh, and it makes the visualization easier. Because of course, I want the Ferrari. Of course I do. Of course I want the giant, 2 or 3 story home with the big spiral staircase, or of course I want all those things. But it can be really overwhelming to try and think of all those things like vividly. But what you can vividly do is picture yourself, because who else do we have the most to go off of, right? So I just started with that, and I was doing, as I was sitting and visualizing, I felt myself physically in the moment, and I started to crack a smile. And I was like, oh, because it was so nice. It feels so good, and it's so vivid. Like it's like almost you're kind of training it to be a memory that hasn't happened yet, right?
Right.
So
think about when you learn to ride a bike, right? You learn to ride a bike. For the first couple of times that you ride the bike, or I don't know how many times it takes somebody to learn it. I've never looked at the stats on that, but you're learning the bike. You finally get to where you get on the bike, you kind of wobble a little bit, but then you're like, you get it. You don't fall as much. You fall some, but you don't fall as much. And then eventually you get on the bike, and unless something like really jumps out in front of you, you just don't ever fall off the bike. Like you just ride, right? So I look at it kind of like that. As you are building your visualization process. And as you're building that version of you in riding the bike, you begin to just embody it, right?
Yeah.
At first you're seeing yourself riding the bike, but then you actually get on the bike and you start doing it, but you already have that like imprint of you having that feeling and having that experience already. So when you're sitting there and you're on the beach and you're really feeling it, like you feel the sun on your skin, you smell the tanning oil, your feet are in the sand, you hear the waves, you can feel like you smell the salt air. You can do all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps your body remember that you've already been there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible that you can do this. Same with the bike. Do I know how to ride a bike? I haven't been on a bike in like over a year or two. Like if I got on a bike right now, could I ride one? Of course I could, because my brain is already going to go back to that thing of, you know how to ride the bike. So when you start to doubt if you've ever been in a place where you can do something, put yourself into that space. Visualize yourself doing that thing. Now, I'm not saying that tomorrow you're going to be a rocket scientist for NASA, because that would take a little bit of work, but you see where I'm going with this.
Yes.
You have to train the brain in the order in which and where you want it to go. If you do want to be a rocket scientist and you do want to be an astronaut, then I recommend that you chart down your path of how you want to be an astronaut. And that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
But if you really wholeheartedly believe that that is your path in life, is to go to another planet and be an astronaut for whomever, then do it.
Right.
There's no limitation there. Like, you will chart your own path and get there no matter what. That's what I believe now. And I did not have this knowing and belief when I was a little kid. I didn't have it when I was a teenager. I didn't have it in my 20s or my 30s. So knowing this now, it's like, it's so powerful, because you can literally do whatever you want. There is no end and there is no limitation. It's the power lies between the space between your ears and what you are willing to do for yourself. That's it.
I can't remember who said it, but there's a great quote. If you can go there in the mind, you can go there in the body.
Yep.
And that's science. It is not woohoo magic. It's science, because Olympic athletes train in their brain. Actually, like legit, they get hooked up to a lot of wires. You can physically see the muscles firing, like they are, whatever, they're running their marathon in their mind, and all the muscles are firing. So the body's going there, but they're actually just sitting there thinking of it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's so important for people that may be like, oh, this is a little too woo. Oh, this is a little too out there. I believe in myself. Da, 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 da. Okay, but if you give it a shot and you try this visualization, and I just can't express how amazing it is. I manifested a car last year and I was shocked, because what I did was I got really pumped up about The Secret. I got really pumped up about manifestation and the power of the mind. And so every night before bed, I would lay in bed and I would picture myself with my hands on the steering wheel of a Ford Edge, because that's what I wanted. And I would picture myself rolling down the window and my hair's kind of going in the wind, and I'm driving on Delaware Road, which is, my mom and dad's road. And I'm just picturing myself doing that. 6 months later, and I had no idea I was gifted the same vehicle from somebody who had no idea that I didn't know I wanted that car at all. But it was just amazing. And I only did this for about 30 days. But I really believed in my mind that I was driving this car. So visualization is so important. And again, if you can go there in the mind, you can go there in the body. Mm-hmm. And I think part of also with the hypnosis and with the breath work, you're peeling back the layers that are going to allow you to get creative and to get excited about the things that you truly, truly want. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when we say, oh, I want this, I want that, do you really want $1 million, or do you just want to have more control over your time? Mm-hmm. Do you really want, the $100,000 house, Or do you just want the house that's really nice, well kept, and your family is inside of it, right? So
Right.
really evaluating what you want, but you
Mhm.
can't do that until you start peeling back these layers of
Mhm.
what's not important, what you've been carrying around, all these things that just weigh us down, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, oh my gosh, but what an amazing interview today. You're an amazing woman. I just love you to pieces. I could talk to you all day long. Um, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think you do amazing work. I think you help so many people. You guys, if you have questions about breath work, hypnosis, visualization, meditation, yoga, any of those things, I highly suggest you reach out to Caroline. She is fantastic. She will definitely respond back to you. You can catch all of her links are here at the bottom. And Caroline, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No problem. It is my honor. I love it. I love helping people. You've been fabulous. I love you to death too. Like you're like my, I don't know, my new soul sister. I'm telling you, like
Oh,
we're meant to find like the people, I truly believe this, like the people that need to be in our lives at certain points in our lives will just show up. And we all have something to teach, and I am a forever learner. Like there is not a person on this planet that I would ever say, oh, you're not significant enough for me to learn a lesson from. Like our animals teach us lessons. You know anything can teach you a lesson. Any object can teach you a lesson. And if that's anything that I leave people with, don't ever underestimate the power of learning and the power to surrender your higher self, to find the wisdom in everyday life. you
yes,
know like
yes,
there's just so many lessons in everything that we do.
yes.
So learn and love.
You guys can also learn a lot from her podcast. It is Tried and True with Caroline. And we actually have an episode on there as well. So I highly suggest you check it out.
Which has gotten a lot of plays, I must say. So
Oh, I'm
yeah.
so excited about that. All right. All right, you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay fabulous, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Hope.